Hey YouTubers, alright, so some tips on getting the most out of your 12th gen i7-12700, 12700F, or maybe in the future the i9-12900, 12900F. So a couple things I've had to do to get my benchmarks up and get the FPS up. I ended up replacing the stock cooler with either this Noctua 120 millimeter single tower single fan, or on a different motherboard we have the 140 millimeter version single tower single fan. So what was the necessity of that? Well, found during the XTU benchmark with the stock cooler, temps got up to 94, and I also noticed that it was power limit throttling. So one of the solutions to power limit throttling out of three that Intel will tell you about is to adjust PL1 and PL2 to unlimited. That's the power limit 1 and power limit 2. So if you're able to do that, that usually means the temperature of your CPU is going to go up, right? So if I'm already in the 90s, who knows what I would have been if it would even allow me to do it. Maybe it would have thermal throttled. So upgrading to this CPU cooler helps to get rid of that additional heat that is created from all that additional power coming into the CPU. Okay, so get familiar with power limits. If you're not familiar with them already, they're going to really help you get that benchmark score up. Now, to successfully do that, folks, there's some other things that you need. One is a motherboard that can handle it in a couple ways that you need to see that motherboard actually be fit for duty for it. One is inside either Intel's XTU, you need to be able to adjust the power limits, or inside the BIOS, they've got to be able to make it basically go to unlimited. If it's only allowing you to have a minor adjustment, then you're not going to get all you can get out of power limits, okay? So the other aspect of the motherboard that you'll want, this motherboard has a 1x8 and a 1x4 CPU power connector. Right now I don't have the second one, the 1x4 hooked up. But you want this, folks, to get that extra juice to the CPU. You're going to need those extra cables, okay? If you don't have them, or the motherboard doesn't support it, then you're going to end up with lower benchmark scores. Now, I eventually will run some comparisons. I may go back and do 1x4, 1x8, and then a 1x8 and a 1x4, just so you can see the differences in the benchmarks and the power usage. I previously did that for 10th gen. I kind of expect it to be about the same, folks. Hence why I haven't necessarily done that video yet. But you know, you will notice the wattage that goes to CPU does go up with power limits and having more CPU power connectors, right? So now, the cheapest motherboard's probably only going to have a 1x8 on it, okay? That's going to be pretty much limited. You may find that the BIOS doesn't allow you to adjust much for power limits. You may find that you can't make an adjustment in Intel's XTU. So the other aspect, folks, is not only do you have to have a motherboard that supports it, but buying a power supply. You don't necessarily need this one. The reason I have this one is because there's an RTX 3090 there, right? But what do you get with this motherboard? This one has multiple CPU power connectors, okay? Though I don't have it hooked up, here is the other CPU power connector. And I will go back and eventually, you know, shut this off and plug that back in. But those are pretty much the things you need to get the most out of your benchmark scores and hopefully get some additional FPS in gaming. Doesn't always translate. Can't always say that a higher multi-core score will really help you in, you know, certain games. Sometimes you can say a higher single-core score will have a difference. Definitely in Fortnite it seems to go that way. So there you go, folks. That's my tips. I hope it helps somebody out, and Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.